Hello Year 4, I hope you're all okay. Today in reading we're going to be continuing with looking at how to make inferences from a text. But before we get into that, I'm going to just give you some retrieval questions. Thinking about what you read yesterday, can you remember any of the following? If you just pause the video and have a think about these following questions, please. Okay, how did you get on? So, do you remember what the children found in the rainforest? That's right, they found a den, didn't they? Now, we know that Con felt a specific way about going into the den. Do you remember how she felt about going into the den? Did she want to go into the den? No, she didn't want to go in the den, did she? She felt a bit nervous and a bit scared. She was a bit anxious to go inside the den. Do you remember why she felt like this? What was her reasons? What did she think was going to be in there? So she thought there was going to be a variety of different maybe insects in there, but she also felt like because she knew that people had previously lived in this den, she was scared that they were going to come back and tell them off. She even said, didn't she, that she thought they were going to eat her, and the other people were like, no, that's a bit silly of you to think that. But Con was very, very scared. Well done. Next one then, what type of person do you think Fred is? Now I've given you the words here, brave, courageous. Do you think Fred is like anything else? So you might have said Fred is very fearless. He's not scared of anything. He is determined. He's very determined to get what he wants and what he needs. And he's quite also very helpful towards everyone else. He's always the first to be like, I'll go in the den. I'll do this. Don't worry. I'll make sure it's all okay. Very protective as well, isn't he? What about Lila then? What type of person do you think Lila is? Okay, so you might think Lila is quite protective too over her brother Max. You might also think that she's a bit like Fred. She wants to go jump in the deep end. Bit opposite to what Con is like though, because Con is a bit like the opposite. She doesn't want to do much. She's a bit scared. All she wants to do is go back to the plane and call for help, doesn't she? Finally then, do you remember what they made beds out of to be able to sleep in the den? That's right, they got massive leaves, didn't they, the size of a bed to be able to sleep on. Well done. So today we are going to continue looking at how to make inferences from a text. And by the end of this session, you're going to be able to read between the lines of a text. You're going to be able to make connections and draw conclusions about the text's meanings and purpose. You're going to be able to draw inferences based on characters' feelings and thoughts. And finally, you're going to justify these inferences by looking at the evidence from the text to help you. To start with then, I have some key words I'm going to teach you. The first one being this word brusquely. Now this word brusquely has two syllables, brusquely. Now this word brusquely is used on page 35 when someone says, fine, he said, more brusquely than he intended. Now, this word brusquely means that you are speaking in a way that is quick and slightly rude. Another way you could use it is by someone saying, I get the point, he interrupted brusquely. Some other words that mean the same or similar to brusquely is blunt, which is why I've got this picture of a pencil here, because a pencil that is blunt, if you're speaking brusquely, you're quite blunt and to the point. You don't actually want to speak for very long. And then also quite abrupt, and abrupt means the same thing, where you'll just say what you want to say and you might not sound too pleasant when you're speaking. An antonym, so the opposite of brusquely, is polite. So if you're speaking polite, you're obviously being quite nice with your tone. But if you're speaking brusquely, you're not very too happy. You don't really seem too enthusiastic about having this conversation, which is why this picture of this woman's here as well. She looks a bit fed up. She doesn't really want to talk. She might be quite rude and just talking really quick. Our next keyword is convalesce. So, 3-syllable word convalesce. So this in the book is said when Fred had been sent to Brazil to convalesce with a distant cousin. Now you will find out in the book that Fred has a condition and he was sent to Brazil to convalesce with a distant cousin. That means that he was sent there to basically get better, recover one's health and strength over a period of time after an illness or a medical treatment. So if you're a bit unwell, so you can see here in our usage box, after your operation, you'll need to convalesce for a week or two. So Fred needed to get better, basically. Some synonyms, words that mean the same or similar, are recuperate and recover. So sometimes if you might be a little bit ill, you might need to take time off to recover or convalesce. The opposite of this is deteriorate. So if you're deteriorating, you're not getting very better, but convalesce is to get better. You can see a picture of a woman here in a hospital bed reading a book with an apple. She is convalescing, okay? Finally then, our final vocabulary word today, unobtrusive. So this unobtrusive word has 4 syllables. Now in the book it states an unobtrusive presence in the classroom. And this basically means that you are not conspicuous or attracting attention. So you're quite quiet, you're quite low key in the way that you're moving and you're giving your presence around the room. Some synonyms may be modest or quiet, so that unobtrusive presence, you're not really getting in anyone's way. You can see the picture here of someone just like a shadow being quiet. They're not really getting involved in too much. So they're still there, but they're not really involved in much. They're not really doing too much to get attention. So another usage, the service was unobtrusive and efficient. Finally, antonyms, bold and extrovert. So if you're obtrusive, it means you're quite out there, you're extroverted in your personality. Okay? I'm going to continue reading today for 2 pages. So, 2 pages, and then I will explain today's task. So, the river, new chapter. It took some time to find leaves wide and strong enough for the roof. The first batch Fred tried tore in his hands. The second turned out to have something in them that made his skin turn red and itchy. But the third tree had fleshy leaves as long as his arm. He and Lila tore them into strips and then wove them into great squares, which they wedged in and out of the branches of the supporting trunks. Think what they might have made with these leaves. Con sat in the grass outside the den, digging a hole in the ground with a twig. Fred crawled in the den and looked up. The sun no longer filtered through 1,000 ant holes. The light inside was dark green, an underwater sunken treasure colour. He felt an unexpected surge of triumph roar through him. "It's good," he called. "You can barely see the gaps." He heard Lila cheer. Fred backed out of the den and stood up too fast. Suddenly his head reeled, colours flashing in front of his eyes. So just think might have happened. He might have had a bit of a dizzy turn. His lungs tied in a double knot, which means he was struggling to breathe. "Are you all right?" asked Lila. "Fine," he said, more brusquely than he intended, so quite blunt. Since his pneumonia, he hated being asked if he was all right. So those of you who don't know, pneumonia is something where your lungs get a bit tight now and again, so that's what happened to Fred. He tried to smile. "Thanks," he added. Fred had been sent to Brazil to convalesce with a distant cousin, so he'd been sent to try and get better in Brazil. The cousin's idea of a good time involved more playing bridge in the dark drawing room than Fred had expected. But his father had said it was the only sensible option. "I can't be at home to look after you," he'd said. "The firm needs me." "I can look after myself," Fred wheezed, so he wasn't very happy that his father wasn't there for him. He'd been made to go with his cousin. "That's not possible," his father said gruffly. He had worked longer and longer hours each year, ever since Fred could remember. Fred could not remember his mother's face except when he was asleep. He'd never seen his father dressed in anything other than a suit, and over time the suit seemed to have seeped into his father's skin. His voice practically wore a tie. "You're treating me like a baby," Fred had said. "Nonsense," his father replied. "Come on, you're a sensible boy." Fred's boarding school report always contained that word, sensible, an unobtrusive presence in the classroom. Sometimes, when they could clearly think of nothing else that distinguished him from his classmates, they added, increasingly tall. Fred knew he was none of these things, or rather, he was tall. Nobody would have argued about that. He grew out of clothes so fast that his ankles were constantly cold. But he was not obtrusive inside, nor was he sensible. Inside, Fred was hunger and hope and wire. It was just that there had never been yet a chance to prove it. His father always insisted so unswervingly on clean shoes and unrebellious eyebrows, but Fred's mind was quick, with sharp edges. He wanted more from the world that he had yet given. Now he tried to grin at Lila. "I'm just dehydrated. We need to find something to drink," he said. "You can live for a long time without eating." "No, you absolutely can't," said Max. But you can't live for long without water." "Do you think we can drink from the—" Lila hesitated, searching for the words. "Tiny cesspool." Now, a cesspool is an area where lots of sewage and garbage and liquids gather together, so it's not a very clean place, not nice to drink from. Fred looked across at the puddle of water. "Could, but I don't think we'd live very long if we did. But we're near the river. We must be," he said. So, we are going to be looking at inference today, and we are going to be helped by Inference Iggy, who is a dog. Now, Inference Iggy helps us to make inferences from the text and explain and justify these inferences with evidence. He is helping you to become detectives today, looking through the text and finding out what it is meaning. Now, you'll see lots of questions from Inference Iggy when someone's trying to check your understanding. The example we're going to look at briefly today is this one here. Now, we're going to try the first one together. And this is a tick box question. It's really important you look for how many boxes you need to tick, which is just the one. It's asking you to look at page 36, where Fred said, "I can look after myself." Now, I'm asking you, why did Fred say this? So what I'm first going to do is look at page 36, and I've got the first bit of page 36 here with the quote, "I can look after myself." And I've also gone back to page 35 because this is the top of page 36, and I want to look back at page 35 to see the context. So I'm now going to read the context. So can you read the context, please, on the top page? Okay, so we now know that the cousin, Fred had been sent to Brazil to get better with the cousin, so cousin would help him. Because the father said, "I can't be at home to look after you," he said. "The firm needs me." And Fred said, "I can look after myself." So now we've read around the text, we can start to make inferences about why Fred wanted to look after himself. Now, we're going to look at the first one. He wanted to get his own medicine. Now, is there anything mentioned about medicine here? No, there isn't, so it can't be that one. He didn't want his cousin to look after him. That word cousin is mentioned here too, so it could be that one, but we're going to carry on reading. He wanted to stay in the den alone. Now, we were mentioning about the den earlier on in the page, but it's not mentioned here. And finally, he was making a joke to his dad. Now, by Fred wheezed, kind of, saying it in a way that he's quite angry, wasn't making a joke. So I would say we are probably going to tick this one here. So I would be ticking that one. Now it's your turn to pause the video and answer the following question, please. Pause the video and have a go. Okay, so number one, the first batch Fred tried tore his hands. Now my question is, why do you think the first batch of leaves tore his hand? So we can find the quote here in the book, "The first batch Fred tried tore his hands." Now we know that they are looking for leaves, so we can use our knowledge of leaves and think, how might have they tore his hands? What kind of leaves would they have to tear hands? Would they be soft leaves? Would they be spiky leaves? Sharp leaves? What type do you think? What type of leaves do you think they might have been if they would tore his hands, ripped his hands open, cut his hands? That's right, they could be sharp leaves. So I'm now using my connections with the book, the quote, and also what I know to think, why might have these leaves tore his hands? Well, they must have been sharp. So my answer would be a bit like this. I think the first batch of leaves tore his hands because the leaves might have been sharp, and when Fred tried to pick them up, they cut him. So that would be my answer. So I have used the book, the quote, the words around the quote, and also my knowledge of the book so far to answer that question. So, what I would like you to do is answer the following questions, and these are all in your resource pack, using the book to help you. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you've come up with, and I will see you in our next lesson. See you later, Year 4.